Princess Diana, called the Queen of Hearts, held the status of a public figure independent of formal royal duties in the 1990s. On the 31st of August 1997, the world held its breath at the news of a crash that moved public opinion across the globe. In Paris, the Mercedes S-280 in which Diana was traveling struck the 13th pillar of the Alma Tunnel, which set off a flood of questions and theories. Accompanying the princess was film producer Dadi Paget, son of the well-known businessman Mohammed Paget, whose name quickly surfaced in media speculation. Dadi's father, owner of the luxury Ritz Hotel in Paris, described his relations with the royal family as an expression of personal esteem and pride. Diana arrived in the French capital together with Dadi on the 30th of August that same year, planning afterwards to return to London after a short stay. Dinner in the hotel restaurant proved impossible because of the lack of privacy, so the couple decided to spend the evening in a private suite. To protect themselves from intrusive media, they decided to leave the hotel by a rear exit and transfer to a waiting Mercedes. A decoy car was positioned at the main entrance to distract photographers from the real escape plan. The decoy vehicle was driven by a driver known to work for the Alphageds, intended to create the impression of a routine departure and mislead observers. Dodi and Diana got into the prepared Mercedes at the back entrance, and a man prepared for a fast drive took the driver's seat. The actual car's driver was assigned as Henri Paul, who later became one of the central figures in the investigation following the tragedy. The vehicle, although armored and heavy, was difficult to handle, which increased the risk of aggressive driving on crowded Paris streets. Paparazzi, determined to get pictures, immediately realized the ruse and began an intense chase on scooters and in cars. The photographers used techniques that, in those conditions, significantly reduced the driver's field of vision, including shooting from close range and dazzling with flash. The couple sat in the back seat. A bodyguard took a front seat, and according to reports, only he had his seatbelt fastened, which affected chances of survival. The vehicle set off into the night where the strobe of camera flashes created chaotic conditions, making driving and judging the road situation difficult. A few seconds after entering the tunnel, the Mercedes nearly collided with a white Fiat Uno, forcing it into a sudden maneuver. A swerve onto the left lane and the subsequent impact with the 13th pillar of the tunnel resulted in the car flipping and striking the right wall, with tragic consequences. After the collision, photographers continued to photograph the wreck, not rendering aid to the injured, which caused public outrage. Princess Diana, although conscious immediately after the crash, had great difficulty breathing and asked to be left alone, as witnesses confirmed. French doctor Friedrich Martinez, driving through the tunnel, stopped, got out of his car, and immediately began first aid. In his assessment, most of the Mercedes's passengers were dead, and only Diana and the bodyguard showed signs of life, which increased the drama of the situation. Rescuers arrived at the scene only at around 12:40, and prior to that only the aforementioned doctor and passing bystanders had intervened. Ultimately, the driver and Dadi Paget were declared dead, and Princess Diana later died in hospital, which shocked public opinion around the world. The only surviving passenger was identified as the bodyguard Trevor Lee Jones, who required facial reconstruction and suffered post-accident amnesia. Jones remembered leaving the hotel and subsequent events only up to the point of leaving the building, and his memory loss complicated the reconstruction of events. As a result of the first investigation announced in 1999, it was concluded that the cause was an accident caused by excessive speed. Analysis showed that the driver was under the influence of alcohol and psychotropic drugs, and the lack of seatbelt use greatly reduced the passenger's chances of survival. Despite that result, Dodi's family, and in particular his father Mohammed Al-Fayed, did not cease to challenge the official account and formulated their own theories. In 2004, a new inquiry known as Operation Paget was launched to thoroughly investigate numerous hypotheses and allegations. The operational investigation examined, among other things, allegations concerning possible actions by intelligence services and alleged links of the driver to intelligence agencies. Theories about the driver's links to MI6, however, were not confirmed, and the alleged financial evidence was explained by the driver's frequent business trips. The hypothesis that the princess was pregnant was also refuted based on post-mortem tests that did not show the presence of the characteristic hormones in the deceased's body. Al-Fayed nevertheless maintained that his son and Diana were partners, citing as evidence a purchase of an engagement ring by Dodi. One of the most intriguing leads was the mysterious roll of the white Fiat Uno, which had moments earlier brushed past the Mercedes and disappeared from the scene. The alleged ownership of that car was linked to a certain photographer, but his death a few years later made such connections hard to verify. Disputes over the origin and technical condition of the Fiat led to speculation that the vehicle might in fact have been incapable of involvement in a dynamic collision. The photojournalist nonetheless took his own life in 2000. But Dodi's father fueled the theory that this could have been the result of tormenting guilt, which was not accepted as proof. Much attention was also paid to versions alleging repainting and repairs to the Fiat that might have concealed its prior technical condition and history. Furthermore, accounts emerged alleging possible tampering with evidence, which nevertheless found no definitive confirmation in investigative documentation. While the public demanded clear answers, the costs of private and public inquiries rose to sums measured in millions of pounds, provoking criticism of the scale of spending. The official inquiry concluded in 2008 with the verdict that blame lay with driver negligence and the failure to wear seatbelts. Operation Paget also analyzed witness statements, video recordings, and documents, attempting to refute or confirm each of the formulated theories. During the investigation, the authenticity of footage from the Ritz, the driver's behavior prior to departure, and possible traces of interference at the crash site were also assessed. Some researchers pointed to the Mercedes's technical past, noting that the hired car had previously been serviced and stolen multiple times, which raised doubts. The private investigation led by the Al-Fayed family likewise failed to produce conclusive evidence of any intelligence service conspiracy. Stories circulated about alleged flashes of light like strobe effects that were said to have blinded the driver at the moment of entering the tunnel, but the Paget report did not confirm this. The lack of recordings from city cameras was explained by technical limitations and absence of recording function, which hindered obtaining additional video material. Allegations of falsified evidence and alleged political pressure were not substantiated after detailed analysis of investigative documents. Among the questions remained the fate of the destroyed Mercedes, which after repairs and thefts continued to circulate, and whose ultimate end was not clearly explained. Witnesses were named, people associated with renting the vehicle were questioned, and the car's service history was analyzed in search of traces of pre-existing faults. The motives and emotions of Mohammed Al-Fayed were often viewed against the background of his ambitions and convictions, which influenced the intensity of his media campaigns. Media and the public created various pictures of this tragedy, from a narrative of an accident caused by inattention to sensational versions suggesting external interference. Accounts of the photographer's failure to provide aid after the crash sparked a wide discussion about the ethics of paparazzi photography following the lives of public figures. Doubts were also raised about the failure of hotel security and municipal services to sufficiently protect guests' privacy, enabling the escalation of the chase. Medical and post-mortem analyses provided grounds for the verdict on direct causes of death, yet they did not dispel all the doubts surrounding the event. Some experts pointed out that the interaction of factors such as speed, vehicle condition, and lack of seatbelts combined into the tragic outcome, rather than a conspiracy. Many details remained ambiguous because some materials were transferred between institutions and subject to different interpretations. The case also became an example of the conflict between the right to information and the right to privacy, which gained international dimension after Diana's death. From the culminating moments of the investigations, documents and reports emerged that became objects of academic and journalistic debate, sustaining interest in the subject. No sensational theory received definitive proof. The inquiries mostly concluded that elements of chance and human error predominated. The triumph of the official narrative did not, however, end the questions because secondary analyses continued to produce unclear premises and accounts. The historical and emotional significance of this tragedy lodged itself in collective memory, simultaneously symbolizing the limits of privacy in the face of the media. The dispute over whether Diana could have survived never boiled down solely to scientific findings. It also encompassed symbolic and moral issues. Looking at the materials, one must note that technical vehicle conditions, such as weight and armoring, affected the dynamics of the collision in the tunnel. Expert analyses also focused on precisely reconstructing the trajectory, angle of impact, and deformations of the bodywork to assess the likelihood of survival. From a narrative perspective, the question of whether Diana could have survived remains rhetorical and prompts reflection on mechanisms of responsibility. In the end, although there are voices of doubt and alternative hypotheses, the bulk of evidence and findings lean toward the view of an unfortunate accident resulting from a confluence of factors.